What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Rewind, where we break down the Sunday morning sermon at City of Light Church. We want to welcome you. We want to thank you for being here. Type in the chat. Let us know you're here, and we appreciate you being here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dina. We're just gonna go around and do a quick intro. I'm Dina.
I'm Corey.
And I'm Derek.
And we are back for week 2 of our series Amplify. This week we looked at the home that worship built. And so right off the bat in the sermon, Pastor Brian started with this question. So I'm going to ask you all, have you stopped and considered how many things you have that have come from someone else?
I think for sure I have a lot of things that came from somebody else. Like, I think of like my job trajectory, like how I've gone from job to job. I remember praying for a better job, and then explaining this to my fiance, who's my wife now, and then all of a sudden somebody hit me up and was like, hey, if you're looking for a job, you should come by and take a look at this job. And I remember going to this job, and the interview, she hired me on the spot, and that line of business led me to another line of business because my friend said, okay, why don't you come to this job and interview for this? And then he like hooked me up and understood the interview process so much that he was able to give me game on that. And it's like literally from job to job to job, every time that I was like moved up into another job, it was because of another person that hooked me up with it. So I've definitely felt that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like that question because in the times you hear a lot of like self-made stuff. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people are on that kick where I'm like, I'm self-made. Yeah. But a lot of times you forget the small things that even people have done for you. You know, like even when it goes back to getting your diaper changed. Like you couldn't, you know what I'm saying? You couldn't do that on your own, period. Somebody did it. You know what I'm saying? So even from birth, you've been getting help. And just to be humble enough to admit, you know, I got help from here. But even like you were saying, the job, like for my first job, you know, I appreciate the people hiring me because that's where I met my wife. You know what I'm saying? So my first job
is...
Okay,
God.
All right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, right. So in that moment, you know what I'm saying, I can look back and be like, God, I thank you for those people that were like, yeah, we'll get this to you. Because when I saw her walk in, I was like, bet. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. Yeah, this is it, right? Because I've never, you know what I'm saying? I never even had the heart to like go after a girl like that. But something about when she walked in, I'm like, I walked upstairs and acted like I was looking at the schedule and everything. She was up there on her first day.
Blank sheet of paper.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I already know what it say. I already know. And I'm like, and then I kind of walked past like, oh, is this your first day? And then it just kind of went from there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there was some hiccups, but eventually that's my wife. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, I appreciate, you got to just look back and reflect on those moments and just appreciate the fact that God used people or, you know, just the people in your life that, you know, parents, siblings, friends in certain moments were just there to help.
It's a fact.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. I think when I look at this question, I immediately reflected like generationally. So I think of like all the women that went before me. I think of, you know, my great-grandma, my grandma, my mom, the sacrifices they made. And I feel like with my parents, like giving up so much in a country that they didn't know much about. And so sacrificing their youth almost to build a life for me, that's immediately what I thought about. And it's just like, yeah, I am who I am because they did what they did.
She took it deep, bro.
Yeah, nah.
Like ours was shallow. We was talking about jobs and wives, and she's talking about generations of sacrifice. Yeah. No, that's good, though. I mean, for you to have that understanding of, you know, generation to generation, I can see where the sacrifices were made. Yeah. You know, so, I mean, that's good. I mean, we can get into the scripture that Pastor Brian was coming from, 2 Chronicles 5. Roundabout, this is where, you know, we know where King Solomon is building the temple. Building the temple and for a place for God to dwell and for the people to come together and assemble. So, Corey, you want to read 2? We can start with 2 and and then just go when we stop, you know what I'm saying?
All right, tell me when to stop. And though Judah was the strongest of his brothers, am I in the right place?
Look, 2 Chronicles 5.
Oh, Lord, I'm in 1 Chronicles. Who got 2 Chronicles up?
You got 2 Chronicles up?
Got it. Got
It's
it.
all good.
All right. So Solomon then summoned to Jerusalem the elders of Israel and all the heads of tribes, the leaders of the ancestral families of Israel. They were to bring the Ark of the Lord's Covenant to the temple from its location in the city of David, also known as Zion. So all the men of Israel assembled before the king at the annual festival of shelters, which is held in early autumn.
So I think the first topic from those scriptures that Pastor Brian pointed out, where Solomon knew that a house without God's presence was worthless.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had this temple built, but knew we can't do this without the ark.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because the ark is God's presence. We can
Presence of
build,
God.
we can build this building, but this building don't mean nothing if we don't invite God's presence in.
It's a big old fact.
Yeah. So I think that was a strong point, is because like a lot of the times, even within our lives, like we can portray an image all we want to, but if you don't actually invite God's presence in, then it's worthless. You know. So it's kind of like the scripture says, like a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. You can portray an image, but you need to make sure that you're inviting God's presence in.
Yeah. Yeah. And that comes back to, too, like the church. What is the church? It's not the building. You know,
Yeah.
it's the people of God.
Right.
You know? Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, so and another point that he made, all important moments, you must take the time to thank God for what he's done. You know, and even that he didn't just go into, oh, look what we did. He was like, wait, before we move any further, let's invite God's presence in, let's thank God, and let's give him the invite before we just move in because we think we did something, you know, type of thing. So I guess I pose a question to you, viewers. You can answer in the chat if you want to. What are you celebrating, or thanking God for? You know, what is that thing in your life that you know, I'm doing this for God, or God did this for me, and I'm stopping and I'm pausing and giving God a second to just thank him and praise him? Because just like Solomon did, he's like, I know we put this temple together, but without me praising you, without me thanking you, we can't really move forward, because it's pointless without your presence.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just to jump on just celebrating what God does, I think of like one of the practices that the Israelites did was like when something were to happen, they would create something that is a memory for it. So if God did something at a certain place, they would say, this rock is, you know, we'll keep this rock here this is a memory of what God did here. And
reminders,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a good practice that we can have. I know a while back, like the Lord spoke to me about putting things up in my house that just reminds me of what God did for my family. Yeah. So that in moments, because it's so easy for us to forget.
Yeah.
When you look in the Bible and you're just reading it, you kind of look at the Israelites or just people in the Bible like, bro, what are you doing? Like, this doesn't make sense, dog. Like, like Samson or something. Like, like you just keep allowing this to happen to you over and over and over again. Or the Israelites, like, why do you keep forgetting everything that God, like he split the sea. Like, how could you not trust him? Yeah. But then God has done so many things for me. And then like next month, I'm not trusting him again.
Right.
And so like having those memories, like when you cross by it, like I said, the Lord spoke to me about putting these things in my house. So when I pass by it, I can remember like, oh yeah, God has been here. God has been in my life, because it's so easy for us to forget.
Right.
You know? And so yeah, we should definitely be celebrating like what God did for us.
I think that's so good that you point that out, Corey, that like there was something to help you remember. And I think we've talked about this too, like off the record, but I feel like photos are such an important thing, at least for me. And like, because when you look back on those periods of your life, like you knew what season you were in, right? And you knew like where God had you, and you knew what you were hoping for. And I feel like for me, it's the memories that come with those pictures, and the memories that come with those pictures of someone else too, that you're reminded of just God's faithfulness over your life and your family and the seeds that come after that too.
Yeah.
Right. And then it definitely pictures, photos, especially being like, you got to take advantage of the times. You know what I'm saying? If you can take a photo, you know, to remind you to so you can think back to be like, you know what, I remember when, or God, I remember this, you know what I'm saying? And then it leads into also what we can talk about next, which is a scary word for I think a lot of people. Even when I heard Pastor Brian say it, consecration, you know what I'm saying? Like we think of that word, you're like, oh, that sounds scary. But really, it just reminds us that even though you guys were talking about, having reminders, at the same time, having that day, like it's a daily walk. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of the times we'll get God one day and we'll try and make that last a week or we'll try and make that last a month and then realize that how far away we fell because we weren't making it a daily thing. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what I got from, when Pastor Brian is talking about consecration. And if you want God to show up, it begins with a consecrated life. Like he shows up one time, but just because he shows up one time doesn't mean he's going to keep on showing up, or doesn't mean you're supposed to live off that one time. Yeah. You're supposed to keep consecrating yourself, keep putting things to the side, or keep giving him your time, keep giving him your effort so that he knows that he's welcome. A lot of times, because even when you wake up, like I've been with my wife, we've been married for 9 years. And I can still wake up one day and feel like, I don't know if she wants me to give her a kiss right now, or I don't know if she wants me to hug her. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like you can have, even though it's a daily thing with each other. So God, sometimes we can wake up and God be like, I don't know if I'm welcome. You know what I'm saying? So we have to.
Are they going to acknowledge me today?
Right. So we have to make that known to him on a daily thing, at those moments of consecration. God, I'm inviting you today, because a new day is different. God was like, you felt a certain way yesterday, but what about today? Right. Like, don't live off of yesterday.
I woke you up this morning. Right.
Right. So, So it goes back to thanking him. Mm-hmm. Just for that small, what did I do for you? God is like, God, you woke me up. I appreciate it. God, continue to have your way, because you already started off having your way, waking me up. Mm-hmm. Now I'm giving the rest of the day to you, type of thing. You know what I'm saying? So going into 2 Chronicles 5 and 10 through 14? You got that, Corey? Or 5, 10 through 14.
All right. 2 Chronicles 5, 10 through 14. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tablets that Moses had placed in it at, Horeb, where the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites after they came out of Egypt. The priests then withdrew from the holy place. All the priests who were there had consecrated themselves, regardless of their divisions.
So they, regardless of what position they held or what tribe they were in, they were like, we're going to consecrate ourselves for this moment. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to make sure we're prepared when we come together.
All the Levites who were musicians, Asaph, Heman, Jeduthun?
Yeah, that sound good to me.
Their sons and relatives stood on the east side of the altar, dressed in fine linen and playing cymbals, harps, and lyres. They were accompanied by 120 priests sounding trumpets. The trumpeters and the musicians joined in unison to give praise and thanks to the Lord. Accompanied by trumpets, cymbals, and other instruments, the singers raised their voices in praise to the Lord and saying, He is good, His love endures forever. Then the temple of the Lord was filled with the cloud.
Man, and we kind of got into this in a pre-discussion, is like they came, like they had consecrated themselves beforehand, and they came together. No, it wasn't a question. It was, we're coming together. We've already done this thing. We've already laid out the invitation for God. So what we're doing is coming together to just celebrate that he's coming or celebrate that he's here. You know what I'm saying? So what that consecration does beforehand is just a personal invite of God's presence into your life. So that when you come out and you go amongst people, it's already there with you. You shouldn't be going looking for him. You should be going knowing he's with you already because of that consecration time, because of that moment. So if you're going out here searching, we can tell, oh, you haven't really been doing that. You know what I'm saying? You shouldn't be out here searching because you should have already been you should have already found it at home, or you already should have had that moment and brought it with you. You know what I'm saying? So then they come together and the cloud fills. Like when you get to that service, bro, and that cloud show up, you know what I'm saying? And you go into the next scripture where it says the priests could not continue their service because of the cloud. You know what I'm saying? Like when God show up and your agenda doesn't matter anymore. And God is like, hey, and you just like, all right, God, take it. You know, whatever you got to do, and it just and the room is just done for. You know what I'm saying? Like those moments of that's what that's what consecration can do. That's what that walk with God can do, is when people come together and just know, hey, if God well, God is here, so let's come together because his presence is all that matters. Our agenda don't matter at the end of the day, because if he grabs a hold of this atmosphere, everybody's going to get what they need anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that's powerful in itself, is just that what consecration can do when you come together. All them people came together. They came and they were singing on the same agenda.
Yeah.
Like, we're just doing this for God. And all of a sudden, God was like, oh, I feel welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, too, going off of that point, Derek, where, like, these priests and these other leaders, like when it says they weren't even really on duty, right? Like, they got dressed and they came and they did and they served and they worshiped. And I just feel like that's a part of consecration, too. It's like, yeah, like, I'm not on the job right now, you know, but it's like, but I'm aware that your presence is here and I will move when you want me to move.
Yeah. It's, what are you putting aside? So we posed the question then to the audience is, what are you setting aside for God? Like, what do you have? What do you know that, hey, this is what I'm putting aside this time. I'm putting aside this moment. Because a lot of times we get caught up in our daily lives. And sometimes God really just wants, we expect, when we hear consecration, that's why I said it's scary, because you think 24/7. Like, I just got to, every part of my day has got to be fasting. It's got to be praying. But sometimes God just, you could be caught up in your phone, and God is like, put the phone down for a second. I want to say something.
Mm-hmm.
Put the phone down, pick up your word.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or turn the TV off for a second. Or turn the computer off for a second. You know what I'm saying? Or just even, hey, go ask your kids what they're doing. Or go ask your sister. Or go ask your mom. You know what I'm saying? Text somebody. You know what I'm saying? Because we'll be so caught up in what we're doing. And a moment of consecration to reach out to either God or reach out to somebody else is a moment where God can move. And he was like, I appreciate you putting that time aside. And now he feels welcome because you humbled yourself to the moment.
Yeah. And I think, too, like what Brian said in the message was like, the consecration part is the part that hit me the most.
Right.
When he shared that story about getting that car.
Yeah.
And,
Same.
him
Same.
like anointing the steering wheel, anointing the mirrors and stuff like that. Like, I relate with that so heavy because, for one, I've done that. Like, a couple weeks ago, definitely looked at, like, the molding of one of my doors in my house. And I'm like, what is this yellow stain right here? And it's, like, right at the top. And I'm like, oh, I remember. I threw the oil on this. Because it's, like, certain stuff, like, it's when you look at this consecration, this principle, right here, we're talking about a festival, a time, like an event.
Right.
But, like, consecration is a lifestyle. It really is. Like, this is what Christianity, like, this is it. It's to be holy like I'm holy. What is holy? Holy separated. Right. We're different.
Right.
Society's going one way, we're going a different way.
That's real.
And, like, really when he said that, I was like, I need to anoint my phone. I need to consecrate my phone because I look at mad stuff in there that I shouldn't be looking at.
Right.
I need to consecrate, like, my time, man. Like, stuff like this. Like, this part really hit me because if you read all of this stuff and you're like, the musicians came together, the Levites came together, they considered God important.
Yeah.
They acknowledged him in that moment. And of course this is probably, especially the Levites, this is something that they did all the time, considering God important. But look how God responds to this. Right. Acknowledgement. Like, all right, you know what? Watch out. Here I come.
Yeah, right.
Y'all done rolled the red carpet out. Let me show you something.
Right,
you
right.
know? Like,
you done made it look good for me. So I'm showing up. You know what I'm saying? Like, why wouldn't he show up?
Straight up. Like, and so when I look at that, I'm like, man, he's basically showing us, like, this is what happens. You know what I mean? When you acknowledge me and when you set the table for me in this manner, I will show you. I will show up. He literally says that in the Bible, right? Like, draw near to me and I'll draw near to you. Mm-hmm. Like, first of all, he never left. Right. It was me.
Right.
But if I just draw near to him, and that's something that I'm practicing personally lately, it's just like I've exchanged some of my music.
Yeah.
One thing I used to get hung up on was when I read the Bible and I don't feel something. Man, I don't feel nothing today.
Right.
I'll try it again tomorrow.
Right.
But what I've been doing lately is like, no, just like I'll play it, let me hear it. I'm just gonna get it in. Just get it in my system.
Right.
I'm gonna make this a thing where, like, even if it doesn't hit me today, he'll call a scripture to remembrance. Like, I see what you're doing there.
Right.
Wow.
That links here with this, and that links here
Right.
with that. I see what you're doing, and it makes a difference. I will say too, and I'll get off this point, but I will say too that the moment that I started doing this, I felt heavily attacked. Like,
Oh, man.
I felt like there was now an opposition.
Yeah.
You know, like there's something now that I'm going against. Like all of a sudden, my temptations are harder.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
Yeah.
like if I were an enemy of somebody, if I were Satan, right?
Yeah.
And I see, oh, this boy going, oh, so he reading now, huh? Oh, he in the Bible all the time now, huh? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, I'm gonna hit you with this. Let's see how you act with that.
Yeah.
Oh, you like IG now?
No, you about to take it somewhere,
How that
bro.
Explore page looking?
Man.
How you got your algorithms looking right
Right,
now? What are
right.
you looking at?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. Like he just, he'll throw stuff that way. And I've been noticing the fight is harder.
Yeah.
The fight is harder.
And I think that scares people. You know,
Heck yeah.
I think that's what scares people is what when I do give myself to God,
Yeah.
that moment of really having to deal with myself. And I think when you said that, the scripture about the thorn comes to mind, where Paul asked for God to take the thorn
3 times.
3 times, and God was like, no. And Paul was probably like, well, why?
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
like, and he was like, you know what I'm saying? And it even says it's for Satan to buffet you, and you like, why do I have this then? But for your thing is that it's always that thing. Like when I really picture a thorn, it's like God. It's like literally the devil just come and flick it, and you be like, ah, and it's like when
Yeah.
a thorn is in there, you like, ooh, you know what I'm saying? You just focus so much on something, and all of a sudden Satan come and go because
Boom.
he know where it's at.
Yeah.
So boom, he flicks it, and now it's up to you. And this is where we get scared, is because it's up to you to not give into it. But he said in my weakness are you made strong. So when that flick isn't for me to give in, that flick is to make me go back to you, God.
Ooh,
Yeah.
come on, bro.
Yeah.
So when you flick it,
my strength is made perfect in your
right?
weakness.
So
Like,
I'm always reminded and humbled, God, that thorn is there to push me closer to you, not to draw me away.
Right.
I'm not being tempted. I'm not being tempted
Dang.
because you hate me, God. I'm being tempted because you want me to come closer.
yeah.
And that too, that plays into like a greater trust, right?
Mm.
A greater trust in God, a greater trust in that, no, the enemy does not have a hold on me, and I can rebuke that
Let's go.
because the Lord has given me the authority to, right?
Let's go.
And then that trust mutually, like
Right.
God can trust you with
Right.
what He has given to you,
Right.
and then you can continue to trust in a deeper level in God as well.
Right.
That's
It keeps that bond strong.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, and the reason why he asked was because I'm getting all this revelation. I'm getting all this stuff. God, if you could just take this thorn from me, I would be doing it. But God's like, no, you'll be doing it, but you'll forget about me. But if I leave this here for you, it keeps the bond strong. Because you'll always remember reminders, like you said, you'll always remember what I did for you. And then go back to say, like, remembering what God has done for you, whether it be through people or through moments or through, it's always that it brings you back to God, I need you.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
keeps you humble,
Yes.
that you're aware of that thorn is there, so you continue to, all right, God, I need you. All right, God, I need you. Like, even though, oh yeah, that was good, I got that good, but God, it was from you, I need you. You know what I'm saying? And not getting so cocky or so arrogant about it, like, oh, this is me. No, that thorn is still there, so boom, that flick, you like, all right, God.
all right.
I know. I'm like, I need to go now. I need
Right.
to go process this now.
It's a fact. Like I think it reminds me of the manna with the Israelites. We on this topic for a minute, but his part was good, man.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the manna of with the Israelites.
Right.
Yeah.
He sets the manna down. They wanted to store it up and keep it for the next day, but God and they couldn't. So they had to keep waiting and keep trusting in God for each day.
That daily-
And it's like, now they says God is immutable. God never changes, right? So it's like the same thing he's doing with the Israelites, he's going to do with us. He's constantly trying to get us to rely on him.
Yeah.
And come to terms with our weakness and being like, look, come to me. I want you to keep coming to me. Like you said, that flick, like come back, man. Just come back. Like I look at Satan, like I don't look at him like a big bully. I look at him like a puppy.
Yeah.
Like, God, sick him out.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, shoot, let me run back to God.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then he also kind of like, low-key kind of a little punk because it's like you resist him and he flees. And that's what consecration does. Like if you keep coming back to him and keep setting things aside for him, you see he shows up, he shows out. And then when he does show up, well, the master here and the puppy got to go. You know, like the puppy got to go sit somewhere because
Yeah.
he can't be in that presence.
Yeah, I mean but it goes back to that daily grind we was talking
Yeah,
about,
man.
that daily walk with God. Because we're especially now in 2020, you know what I'm saying, and everybody out there knows. We know that we're always trying to find something to make things more comfortable.
Yeah.
Facts.
That's just as human nature.
Facts.
It goes back to when you said talking about the manna. That was a day they were trying to store it up, but the next day it would be spoiled. So God is like, no, daily. I'm gonna bring it daily. You just trust me that I'm bringing it daily. And that's like oh, we put something in the refrigerator, bro. You half use it, and then a month later it's rotten in the refrigerator. You know what I'm saying? You like, and then it makes me reflect. Like, man, I didn't even need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I could have almost did it daily. It's so convenient for us to just go to the grocery store because that's what we're used to. But what if God challenged you to just eat once a day, or just to eat daily? Like, don't go grocery shopping for a week. Just go for a day. We don't know that. Like, even though I'm saying it would be hard for me to just keep going to the store because you're like, no, I got a whole family.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go drop this $100, this $150 on my whole family. So we set for the week, 2 weeks, type of thing. But it's really that's just human nature. We find ways to make things comfortable, and then that's where we get attacked, is in our comfort.
Yeah.
When really we're supposed to keep it uncomfortable, so that we always have a reason to go back to God, or to lean on God, or to trust God through that daily grind.
That's tough.
And I think too, like, when you're believing in God and when you're believing in God for big things to happen,
Right.
sometimes you don't need to know how. You just need to believe that it can happen.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to believe that God is going to provide for me.
Right.
God's going to show up today. I don't know how he's going to show up, but he's going to show up today.
Exactly.
And I'm going to make the space for him to show up.
Right. And you wait. Like, and it's,
Tell you this principle
dude,
is crazy.
you wake up in the morning because you went grocery shopping. You wake up in the morning knowing you got something in there. You're not trusting God. You're trusting the fact that you prepared yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm just prepared with this food. I'm not trusting God for something to eat. I'm just trusting my refrigerator. You know what I'm saying? But what if the power went out and you didn't realize the power went out? You open the refrigerator, everything's spoiled. So now, do you trust God? You know what I'm saying? Are you going to be like, all right, God, I trust you, even though all my food is spoiled, I'm still going to eat? You know what I'm saying? Type of thing. Is that is your trust in that, or is your trust really in Him? And I think sometimes he deals with certain moments in our life, deals with our comfort, to where we're challenged, to where we're like, oh, my comfort is because it shows in that moment where you're like, oh, my food is spoiled. I'm peed off. Like, I'm upset. We don't got nothing to eat. Or could you be like, you know what? It's cool, God. My family, we still gonna eat. Like, I'm not worried about it. And that shows that you've been building that relationship. But in those moments, if you're just relying on one moment, you know what I'm saying? If you're just relying on that one moment, then if that happens 2 weeks from that moment, you haven't been seeking God. You haven't been, and then all of a sudden something like that happens and you realize, dang, I'm not really as close to God as I'm supposed to be. Because that happened and I got super upset. I got super angry, and now it affects everybody around me. When really in that moment, God was like, I need you to be able to be present, because you don't know who's watching. And then that goes into now even what we're going to talk about now.
Or what else, too, Derek, is like you can get angry,
Yeah.
and God is still going to show up. And then sometimes you look back and you're like, dang, why was I angry?
That is crazy, though.
that
Isn't it
mercy
crazy?
something else, man.
Isn't it crazy? I got, man, I don't mean to be off. It just made me think about my wife got me a gift, and I knew it was coming, but I didn't know it was necessarily coming that day.
You got your
But it was-
PS5. Look
No,
at God.
No. It's actually it
Low
was
give him a PS5.
it was a laptop. It's my first laptop
That's what's up.
I've ever had.
That's
Because I've always been using her work laptop, or I've been using the kid's tablet or
Yeah.
something. She was like, "I'm gonna give you this. I'm gonna invest in you, so you got time to write, so you got time to study, so you
That's
got time."
what's up.
You know what I'm saying? So I appreciated that, and I was looking for it. But right before it came, me and her kind of got into a little something, and I was willing, and then I had to check myself, and I was like, man. So then she was working. She was upstairs. It was weird. She's upstairs working, but I'm texting her because I'm like, she's working, so I'm texting her, but she texting me back, and I'm like, I shouldn't act like that. That was stupid. I don't even know why I got like that. And like 5 minutes later, here come the FedEx truck, and I'm like, God, would the FedEx truck still showed up even if I was still upset?
Dang.
You know what I'm saying? So it was like, it felt good because I'm like, I'm good. I'm in a good place. But even in that moment, I would have got checked by the FedEx truck. Even if I didn't check myself, the FedEx truck would have, because I'm like, dang, I treated her like garbage. And now this, so like kind of like what you said, like God still shows up, you know, even in those moments to remind you, like, hey, you know what I'm saying? You was a jerk, you know, and it's really just takes that self-awareness, you know, to be like, you know what, God, what did I do? You know, because a lot of times it's like, it's what you did, it's what you did, it's what you did. No, God, what did I do? What did I do to be a part of this debacle? You know what I'm saying? Because it's always everybody else's fault, but it comes down to that accountability, that self-awareness, and it goes back to that consecration that you do. When you have those moments with God to reflect, you'll always, once you get to a point like that, it builds up your accountability. It builds up your self-awareness to you're like, man, I should. So even when you make a mistake, even when I yell at my kids, and I do, I'm admit that, like a kid, man, I yelled at them today. Everybody still, you know, and you'd be like, you know what? I shouldn't have yelled like that. But it's the transparency. My dad wasn't big on that. You know what I'm saying? Like he wasn't big on apologizing after he did something. He just did it. But I think it shows the kids something, like, because I know what I had growing up. So when it shows the kids something, when I take that moment to be like, I'm sorry. The honesty is like, look, I ain't perfect, but I'm gonna apologize to you. Because a lot of times we'll know we made the mistake, but we'll walk off with the pride instead of having that honest, transparent moment and being like,
that's whack.
You know what I'm saying? And the kids see that. So the kids see you angry, but they also see you apologize. So then they see the battle of you fighting, you fighting with yourself. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's now we can go into what we're talking about, where David set it up for Solomon. So we're gonna go back to 1 Chronicles. But David set it up for Solomon, and then in that sense, it's kind of like me setting up for my kids. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to learn some tough lessons when I was already grown. But God allowed me to be transparent with my kids so they can get it now. You know what I'm saying? So they can see the fight within. You know what I'm saying? So they can see me dealing with myself, me being transparent, me being humble enough to be like, hey, yeah, that wasn't right. You know, because that's what people need to see, is that moment where you, like, even if you do mess up, they see you take accountability for it. Because sometimes that's more helpful than you just being profound. You know, you never realize how profound a moment of you apologizing is, or you owning up to your mistake. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's just, especially within church. So sometimes we just got to be able to be like, hey,
you messed up.
What my part, your part. You know what I'm saying? If we all admit to our part, then we can move on. You know what I'm saying? But it's like we get so prideful about what they did. But so, and I think, so going into this is David, 1 Chronicles 22, 5 and 9. Did you want to read that, Dina?
Sure. David said, "My son Solomon is still young and inexperienced, and since the temple to be built for the Lord must be a magnificent structure, famous and glorious throughout the world, I will begin making preparations for it now." So David collected the vast amounts of building materials before his death. Then David sent for his son Solomon and instructed him to build a temple for the Lord, the God of Israel. "My son, I wanted to build a temple to honor the name of the Lord my God," David told him. "But the Lord said to me, 'You have killed many men in the battles you have fought, and since you have shed so much blood in my sight, you will not be the one to build a temple to honor my name.'" And then in verse 9, "But you will have a son who will be a man of peace. I will give him peace with his enemies in all the surrounding lands. His name will be Solomon, and I will give peace and quiet to Israel during his reign." Wow. That was good.
It's a lot in that, man.
You got something? Or, the understanding that David had to be like, God's not giving me this. This ain't for me. But what I'm going to do is set it up for somebody else. And I think now that goes full circle into the series Amplify, where we're talking about generosity. David accepted the fact that God told him, hey, you've been out here killing plenty people. Like, you got plenty blood on your hands. I'm still with you, but you're just not gonna do this. Like, this ain't for you.
Those hands won't touch this.
Yeah, those hands won't touch this. It's too much on there. But I'm gonna set it up to where your son is the representation of that. And I think sometimes it's like we gotta accept our place with God sometimes, and it's like, okay, God, what can I sow into What can I sow into my kids? What can I sow into my friends? What can I sow into my family? What, God, what can you do through me that will help set somebody else up for your purpose or for your glory? Because I think that's a lot of times we get so caught up in me. But sometimes it's like God wants to challenge you on what you're going to do for somebody else. What can I do for my kids? How can I help my kids? And in my mind, that's a small part, to go back to what I was saying, is just being willing to apologize or just being willing to admit to I was wrong. Look, son, I know I yelled at you. I shouldn't have did that, especially at that time. That I shouldn't have did that. I'm sorry about that. I'm working on it. You know what I'm saying? Just to have that open, transparent moment where your kids now know that's how a man should act, or be willing to admit to his problems, or admit to his, be accountable. And I think that's, for me personally, that's how I view it, is like just to have those moments and those honest moments with my kids where I can set them up for their future as grown. So they'll always have that assurance in God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I look at this, I think of the verse that says, nothing that's done for the Lord is done in vain.
Yeah.
And I think something new that was brought to my attention when I heard the sermon was that, like, it's not just in this present moment, but like nothing that you do for the Lord is done in vain, even like across generations. And you see that in David, in his preparation, and that work was not done in vain, and that's going to go on to his son, and that's going to continue, all throughout.
Right.
And so I think that was something new, and it was really eye-opening too, that like sometimes, like what you were saying, Derek, it's all about like, oh yeah, like how is God preparing me, and how is God, like what is God doing in my life, and
Right.
God, what's next for me? But it's like all of that impacts, it impacts your family, it impacts your siblings, your friends, your kids, whatever. It impacts in that current moment, and then it transcends also.
Right.
That's
No,
good.
that's it. So then we pose the question to you, viewers. What's up, everybody? What are sorry, it was a good conversation. We apologize, but what are you doing to set others up for success? And as we come to a close, that's the question. Like, what? Just for you to think about it. If you want to type in what you think an answer is, or just food for thought. What are you doing to set up the people around you, not just yourself?
Yeah.
Where do you know God is working with you, that you're being used to help somebody else? And also, quote Pastor Brian said in the sermon that I like to close it out: if you don't die empty, you haven't lived fully.
Ooh.
And I think David knew, this is my final moment.
Yeah.
Like, this is me just giving the rest of it. Like, I'm not going to die holding on to this stuff. A lot of times we die holding on to stuff. But really, it's like, no, I don't need this. I'm about to die. Take all this, build God's temple with it. So
I, just to speak on that, I know we're probably coming to it
You
again,
good.
but just to speak on that, so my grandmother my grandmother was just a fire woman. She was just so dope on so many levels, but she really like gave her life to service. So she
Right.
was she marched with Dr. King. She worked with Father Grappi here in the city. She fought for education reform and stuff like that. Bunch of cool stuff. Here's the thing. She passed. As she was passing, she was still trying to serve people, still trying to serve us. Like, even certain things that I would say to her, she would say things different to me. Like, because she knew she was passing, when I say I love you, she would say, oh, I know. Like, she was just reassuring me, no regrets when I'm gone. I know you love me,
Right.
And when she passed, all I got was like stories after stories after stories about how my grandmother helped somebody.
Yeah.
And she was a believer. So it'd be neighbors I never met. Your grandmother came and did this for me and helped my daughter with this. And, when I got out of jail, she helped me with this and all of this stuff. And then what it spoke to me, even in her death, was like, she lived a life that was poured out. She didn't hold any of this stuff in. And I said, okay, I have to live that way.
Right.
And I'm completely not there. But that's what that speaks to me, is like living a life that is poured out. If God is so rich in all of these things and he gives this to us, why not pour it out, especially the way he is? Like with the manna.
Right.
He probably had so much they could give away.
Right.
And they didn't need to store up. Like, there's so much that God's going to pour into us as his people that we can just give out, instead of holding that thing in. But yeah, for sure, just living a life poured out just speaks to me heavily.
Right. What does your legacy in God look like?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And obviously your grandmother left a legacy in God
Mm-hmm.
to where now it's a constant reminder to you to be like, hey, this spoke to me.
Mm-hmm.
So the way she lived. So what kind of, so then our prayer, for everybody out there, our prayer for everybody out there is just to God to help you, for God to help you to see clearly on what he's doing in you. And not just what he's doing for you, but what he's doing in you that can glorify him by how you touch other people, how you set up other people, and how you share this word, how you share the gospel, how you go out here and leave a legacy like Corey's grandmother did, and so that it touches people, so that when you die, people remember, hey, I appreciate that about him, and I appreciate what God did in him, or I appreciate what God did in her. You know what I'm saying? So we pray that this conversation has blessed you. There's a conversation that's touched you to encourage you to keep on pursuing after God and to keep on seeing how God can use you to affect those around you. We thank everybody for watching this, for being a part of this. We love you. We appreciate you. God bless.